Some objects are not meant to be brought home, because sometimes the thing you buy to make your life easier can become the reason your life turns into a nightmare. This is the story of three friends from a small town in Colorado who bought an old air cooler to escape the unbearable summer heat, but they did not know that the machine they brought home was carrying a secret that had been buried for years, a secret that would follow them until the end. In the quiet town of Maple Creek, Colorado, summer had become almost impossible to survive. The sun burned from early morning until late evening. The small houses in the town had no proper cooling systems, and for many families, even buying a simple fan was difficult. Liam Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he returned from his daily work at a nearby construction site. He dropped his heavy bag near the wooden chair outside his house and looked at his friends sitting nearby. I do not know how many more days I can survive this heat. Every night feels like I am sleeping inside a furnace. Ethan Brooks laughed while drinking water from a steel bottle. You say that every day, Liam, but honestly, this year the heat is worse than anything I have ever seen. Jason Miller looked toward the empty street. Even the nights are not giving us relief anymore. The electricity goes out every few hours, and without a fan it becomes impossible to sleep. The three friends had grown up together in Maple Creek. They worked different jobs but shared the same struggles. Life in the small town was simple, but money was always tight. That evening they sat outside their old neighborhood house trying to enjoy whatever little breeze was coming through. Suddenly Liam noticed an advertisement stuck on a nearby electricity pole. He walked closer and removed the old paper. Guys, look at this. It says someone is selling an old air cooler. Ethan looked at the paper. An air cooler? How much? Liam read the number carefully. Only $50. Jason immediately shook his head. That cheap? Something must be wrong with it. Maybe it does not work. Or maybe it is completely broken. Liam folded the paper and smiled. Even if it works for a few weeks, it will make our nights easier. We cannot keep suffering like this. After discussing for some time, the three friends decided to visit the address written on the advertisement. The next afternoon they walked toward the old part of Maple Creek. The address led them near the edge of town, away from the main houses, near a place locals rarely visited. An old abandoned property surrounded by tall trees. A faded wooden board hung outside the gate. Ravenwood Estate. The house looked forgotten. The paint had peeled away. The windows were covered with dust, and the garden had completely turned wild. Jason stopped near the gate. Are you sure this is the right place? Because this house looks abandoned. Ethan looked at the paper again. The address is correct. Before they could say anything else, the old wooden door of the house slowly opened. An elderly man stepped outside. He had white hair, a tired face, and a strange silence in his eyes. You came for the cooler. The three friends looked at each other. Liam nodded. Yes, sir. We saw your advertisement. The old man looked toward the house, then back at them. You can take it, but remember one thing. Never turn it on after midnight. The three friends became confused. Jason laughed nervously. Sir, it is just an air cooler. Why would we not turn it on at night? The old man did not smile. Because after midnight, it does not always cool the room. Sometimes, it brings back what was never supposed to return. The three friends stopped laughing. A strange silence filled the air. Liam looked toward the old house. What exactly happened here? The old man ignored the question. He simply pointed toward a dark room inside the house. The cooler is there. Take it if you still want it. Slowly, the three friends entered the old Ravenwood Estate, not knowing that the decision they had just made would change their lives forever. The inside of Ravenwood Estate was colder than outside, but not because of any air conditioning. The air inside the house felt strange, heavy, and completely silent. Every step the three friends took created a loud echo through the empty rooms. Dust covered the old furniture. The walls were filled with faded family photographs, and the wooden floor made cracking sounds with every movement. Jason looked around nervously. I do not know why, but this place feels wrong. Ethan tried to laugh. Relax. It is just an old house. We are here only to take the cooler and leave. Liam walked ahead holding his phone flashlight. The old man had told them the cooler was in the back room. After walking through a long hallway, they finally reached a small storage room. Inside, covered with an old cloth, was the vintage air cooler. It was much older than they expected. The metal body was covered with scratches. A strange symbol was carved near the front panel. Liam removed the cloth. This thing is old, but it looks strong. Jason touched the side of the machine. Why does it feel so cold? Ethan looked at him. Cold, without even being turned on. Nobody answered. For some reason, all three of them felt uncomfortable standing near it. Suddenly, a picture frame fell from the wall behind them. They quickly turned around. On the floor was an old black and white photograph. Liam picked it up. The photograph showed a woman standing beside the same air cooler. She was wearing an old white dress. Her face looked serious, almost emotionless. At the bottom of the photograph, a name was written, Evelyn Blackwood. Jason looked at the picture carefully. Who is she? Before anyone could answer, the old man appeared at the doorway. His voice was low. She was the last person who owned that cooler. Liam looked at him. Who was she? The old man remained silent for a moment. Then he said, my sister. The room suddenly felt colder. Ethan noticed the old man's expression. What happened to her? The old man looked toward the photograph. 20 years ago, during the hottest summer this town had ever seen, Evelyn lived alone in this house. The electricity failed for many days. She bought this cooler hoping it would help her survive the heat. But one night, something happened. She disappeared. Nobody ever found out what happened to her. Jason frowned. You mean she just vanished? The old man nodded slowly. People searched everywhere, but there was no sign of her. Only this cooler was left behind. Liam looked at the machine again. Then why are you selling it? The old man looked directly into his eyes. Because some things should not stay inside a house forever. The three friends became silent. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Then Jason whispered, maybe we should leave it. But Liam looked at the machine. The summer heat, the sleepless nights, the struggle they faced every day. He took a deep breath. We already came this far. Maybe the old stories are just rumors. The old man watched them carefully. Take it if you want, but remember my warning. Never turn it on after midnight. And if you hear someone calling your name from inside the cooler, do not answer. The three friends looked at each other. They thought the old man was trying to scare them. They carried the cooler outside, placed it on a small cart, and started walking back toward Maple Creek. But none of them noticed something strange. As they moved away from Ravenwood Estate, the old air cooler suddenly turned on by itself. Even though it was not connected to electricity, a faint sound came from inside, like someone was whispering, Liam, Liam. The three friends continued walking, unaware that something had already followed them home. By the time Liam, Ethan, and Jason reached their house in Maple Creek, the sun had already disappeared behind the mountains. The summer sky turned dark orange, and the streets of the town became quiet. The three friends placed the old air cooler inside Liam's room. They were tired after carrying it all the way from Ravenwood Estate, but they were also excited. For the first time in weeks, they thought they might finally sleep peacefully. Jason connected the wire and checked the machine carefully. The old cooler made a few strange noises, but after a moment, the fan inside started moving. Cold air slowly began filling the room. Ethan smiled. Finally, a night without sweating like crazy. Liam sat near the cooler enjoying the breeze. I told you guys, it was worth buying. $50 well spent. Jason looked at the old machine. Maybe, but I still cannot forget what that old man said. Never turn it on after midnight. Ethan laughed. Come on, Jason. You really believe that? An old man tells a scary story and suddenly the cooler becomes haunted. We need sleep, not ghost stories. The three friends laughed, and for a while, everything felt normal. That night, the temperature dropped inside the room. The sound of the cooler became the only noise around them. Slowly, all three friends fell asleep, but exactly at 12 o'clock midnight, something changed. The old clock on Liam's wall stopped ticking. The lights flickered once, then the air cooler suddenly became louder, much louder. Liam opened his eyes. At first, he thought the machine was just making a normal sound, but then he heard something else. A voice, a faint whisper coming from inside the cooler. Help me. Liam sat up immediately. His heart started beating faster. He looked around the room. Nobody was awake. He slowly moved closer to the cooler. The whisper came again. Liam, help me. He stepped backward, because the voice sounded like a woman crying. Liam remembered the old man's warning. If you hear someone calling your name from inside the cooler, do not answer. He wanted to run, but curiosity stopped him. He slowly touched the power switch. The moment his hand reached the button, the cooler turned off by itself. The room became completely silent. Liam stood frozen. Then suddenly, the cold air returned, but this time, it was freezing. The temperature dropped so quickly that his breath became visible. Behind him, a soft sound came from the corner of the room. Someone was crying. Liam slowly turned around, and his entire body became numb. Standing near the window was a woman wearing an old white dress. Her hair covered most of her face. She was looking directly at him. Liam could not move. The woman slowly raised her head. Her eyes were empty. Her skin was pale, and her voice was barely a whisper. Why did you bring me back? Liam tried to speak, but no words came out. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened loudly, Ethan and Jason woke up. Liam, what happened? Why are you standing there? The moment they entered the room, the woman disappeared. Only the cold air remained. Jason looked around in confusion. What happened here? Liam pointed toward the cooler. His voice was shaking. There was someone here. A woman. She was standing right there. Ethan looked at him seriously. Are you sure? Maybe you were half asleep. But then Jason noticed something. He walked toward the cooler, and his face changed. Guys, come here. On the dusty surface of the cooler, there were fresh fingerprints. Small, thin, like a woman's hand. The three friends looked at each other. Nobody spoke, because they all knew one thing. Whatever happened inside that room was not a dream. The next morning, they decided to return the cooler to Ravenwood Estate. But when they reached Liam's room, they found something that made their blood run cold. The cooler was no longer facing the bed. It had moved during the night, and it was now facing the bedroom door, as if it was waiting for someone to enter. The three friends stood silently inside Liam's room. Nobody could explain what they were seeing. The old air cooler had moved by itself during the night. It was now facing the bedroom door, exactly as if someone had dragged it there and placed it carefully. Jason slowly stepped closer. Did any of you move it before sleeping? Liam immediately shook his head. Number, I swear I did not touch it. Ethan looked at the floor. Maybe someone broke into the house, but his voice lacked confidence, because there were no footprints, no broken locks, no signs of anyone entering. The only thing that had changed was the position of the cooler, and the strange fingerprints on it. Liam looked at the machine with fear. We need to get rid of this thing, right now. The three friends quickly picked up the cooler. They carried it outside the house. Their plan was simple. Return it to Ravenwood Estate, and never think about it again. But when they reached the gate of their house, something strange happened. The old cooler suddenly became extremely heavy. All three of them struggled to lift it. Jason looked confused. What happened? It was not this heavy yesterday. Liam tried pulling harder. Something is wrong. It feels like someone is holding it from inside. The moment he said those words, the cooler started making a strange sound, like someone was breathing inside it. All three friends immediately dropped it. They stepped away in fear. Then, the cooler switched on by itself. Cold air rushed out, and mixed with the hot morning wind. A woman's whisper came from inside. Please, do not leave me here. The three friends froze, because this time, all of them heard it, not just Liam. Ethan slowly whispered, You heard that too? Jason nodded. We need to leave. Now. They ran back into the house, and locked the door. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Finally, Liam looked at his friends. We cannot ignore this anymore. Something is connected to that cooler. We need answers. That afternoon, the three friends went back to Ravenwood Estate. The old house looked even more frightening during the day. The trees around it blocked most of the sunlight. The broken windows looked like empty eyes watching them. They knocked on the door. After a few moments, the old man opened it. When he saw them, his expression changed immediately. You turned it on after midnight. It was not a question. The three friends remained silent. The old man closed his eyes. I warned you. Liam stepped forward. Who is Evelyn Blackwood? And what is inside that cooler? The old man looked toward the house, then slowly invited them inside. For 20 years, I have tried to forget that night. But maybe it is time someone knows the truth. They followed him into the old living room. The old man sat down. His hands were trembling. My sister Evelyn was not just a woman who owned that cooler. She was my family. She lived in this house alone after our parents died. During the summer of 2004, the heat became unbearable. One night, the electricity failed completely. Evelyn was desperate for cold air, so she turned on the cooler. But that night, something happened. The old man stopped speaking. Liam asked quietly, What happened? The old man looked toward the dark hallway. At exactly midnight, neighbors heard Evelyn screaming. When they entered the house, she was gone, but the cooler was still running, and the room was freezing cold. Jason swallowed nervously. Did they ever find her? The old man slowly shook his head. Number. But after that night, people started hearing her voice, coming from this house, asking someone to help her. The room became silent. Then the old man said something that shocked them. The cooler was not carrying her spirit. It was keeping her trapped. Suddenly, a loud noise came from upstairs. Everyone looked toward the ceiling. A slow walking sound echoed from the empty rooms. Step, step, step. The old man stood up, his face filled with fear. She knows you came here, and now, she wants the cooler back. At that exact moment, the front door behind them slammed shut by itself, and from the dark hallway, a woman's voice whispered, Liam, you brought me home. Now I will never leave. The voice echoed through the old Ravenwood house. Liam, you brought me home. Now I will never leave. The three friends stood frozen. The old man quickly walked toward the front door and tried to open it, but the door would not move. It was locked, not from the outside, but as if something on the other side was holding it. Ethan looked around nervously. What is happening? The old man grabbed an old wooden cross hanging near the wall. His hands were shaking. She has become stronger, because you carried that cooler away from this house. Jason looked at him in fear. How do we stop this? The old man looked toward the hallway. There is only one way. You have to return the cooler to the place where it was found. The three friends exchanged worried looks, but before they could respond, the sound of the cooler turning on came from outside. Everyone became silent, because the cooler was not outside anymore. It was standing in the middle of the living room. Cold air was spreading around it. The machine had moved inside the house by itself. Liam stepped backward. How did it get here? The old man whispered. She brought it back. Suddenly, the lights went off. The entire house became dark. Only the cold blue light from the cooler remained. Then a shadow appeared on the wall. A woman's figure, standing behind them. Nobody was there, but the shadow was moving. Slowly, the shadow turned its head toward Liam, and a voice whispered, "You promised to help me." Liam shook his head. "I never promised anything." The shadow moved closer. "You heard me. You saw me. Now you belong to me." The old man shouted. "Evelyn, leave these boys alone. This is not their fault." The shadow stopped, then slowly turned toward the old man. A deep sadness filled the room. "Brother, why did you leave me?" The old man closed his eyes. "Because I was scared. I searched for you, but I could not find you. I thought you were gone forever." The room became colder. The voice from the shadow became softer. "I was here all along, trapped inside this machine." The three friends looked at each other. For the first time, they realized something. Evelyn was not just a dangerous spirit. She was a soul trapped in pain. But before anyone could say anything, the cooler suddenly exploded with a loud sound. The room filled with freezing air, and the shadow disappeared. When the lights came back, the cooler was silent. The old man quickly moved toward it. "Look, something is written on it." Everyone gathered around. On the metal surface, words had appeared. "Bring me back to where I was lost." Jason looked confused. "What does that mean?" The old man stared at the message. "It means we have to take the cooler back to the old basement, the place where Evelyn disappeared." Liam looked worried. "But that house is abandoned. Nobody goes there anymore." The old man nodded. "Because nobody who went there after that night came back the same." Ethan looked at his friends. "We started this. We have to finish it." That evening, the four of them prepared to return to Ravenwood Estate. They carried the cooler toward the abandoned basement area behind the old house. The sun slowly disappeared. Darkness covered Maple Creek, and as they reached the old property, the air became colder. The trees around them moved without wind. The old basement door was covered with rust. The old man opened it slowly. Inside was complete darkness. A smell of old dust filled the air. Liam turned on his flashlight, and they started walking down, one step at a time. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Then suddenly, the cooler behind them switched on. Nobody had touched it. Everyone turned around, and standing beside the machine was Evelyn, but this time, they could see her clearly. Her face was no longer angry. She looked tired and afraid. She pointed toward the darkness at the end of the basement, and whispered, "I am not the only one trapped here." The four people looked toward the dark corner. Something moved inside, something much bigger than Evelyn. Then a second voice echoed through the basement. "You should have left the door closed." The voice from the darkness made everyone freeze. "You should have left the door closed." The flashlight in Liam's hand started shaking. He slowly pointed it toward the corner of the basement, but there was nothing there. Only an old wooden door covered with scratches. The old man looked at the door with fear. That door was never supposed to open. Ethan looked at him. "What is behind it?" The old man remained silent for a moment. Then he whispered, "The truth about what happened 20 years ago." Everyone looked at him. The old man took a deep breath. That night when Evelyn disappeared, she was not alone in this basement. Something else was here with her. Something that came with the cooler. Jason looked confused. "What do you mean?" The old man looked at the machine. The cooler was not the reason she disappeared. It was the thing that followed her through it. Suddenly, the old wooden door behind them started shaking. Slowly, something was hitting it from the other side. Boom, boom, boom. The sound became louder. Evelyn appeared again near the cooler. Her eyes were filled with fear. She looked at the old man. "Brother, you have to stop it." The old man stepped forward. "I am sorry, Evelyn. I should have done this years ago." He walked toward the old door and removed an old chain hanging around it. Liam quickly stopped him. "Are you sure about this?" The old man looked at him. "Number, but if we do not open this door, it will never end." The chain fell to the ground. The door slowly opened by itself. A freezing wind rushed through the basement. The lights of their flashlights went out, and in the darkness, they heard footsteps, slow footsteps, coming toward them. Ethan whispered, "Everyone stay together. Do not separate." The flashlights turned back on, and what they saw made them speechless. Inside the hidden room were dozens of old objects, old photographs, broken furniture, and hundreds of names written on the walls. Jason moved closer. "Who are all these people?" The old man looked around suddenly. "They are the people who heard the voice, the people who came looking for Evelyn, and never returned the same." Liam noticed something on the wall. A photograph. It showed Evelyn standing beside the cooler, but behind her, there was a dark figure, a tall shadow standing near the machine. The same shadow they had just seen. Ethan pointed at the picture. "What is that?" The old man whispered. "I do not know, but it has been here longer than any of us." Suddenly, the cooler started running again. Cold air filled the basement, and Evelyn appeared in front of it. The dark figure behind her started becoming visible, a tall black shadow, with no face, no eyes, only a deep empty darkness. The old man stepped back. It followed Evelyn. It was never trapped inside the cooler. It was using her to escape. The shadow moved closer. The walls started shaking. The old wooden room began cracking. Liam grabbed the cooler. "We need to destroy it." But Evelyn stopped him. "Number, if you destroy it, it will be free." Everyone became silent. "Then what do we do?" Evelyn looked at Liam. "The cooler was never the prison. This basement was. You need to close the door again, but someone has to stay behind." The four friends looked at each other. Nobody spoke, because they understood what she meant. Someone had to stay inside. Suddenly, the shadow moved toward them. The old man pushed the door. "Go. I know what I have to do." Liam shouted, "Number, we cannot leave you here." The old man smiled suddenly. "I lost my sister once. I will not lose her again." The basement started collapsing. Dust filled the air. Evelyn looked at her brother. "Thank you." The old man closed the door from inside. The shadow screamed. The sound shook the entire house. Liam, Ethan, and Jason ran out of the basement. The moment they reached outside, the old Ravenwood estate began collapsing. The entire house disappeared into darkness, and the last thing they heard was the sound of the old air cooler turning off. For the first time in 20 years, there was silence. The morning sun slowly appeared over Maple Creek, but for Liam, Ethan, and Jason, that night never truly ended. They stood outside the ruins of Ravenwood Estate, watching the place where they had experienced something impossible. The old house was gone. Only broken pieces of wood and dust remained. For several minutes, nobody spoke. They were trying to understand everything that happened. Jason finally broke the silence. "Do you think it is really over?" Ethan looked at the destroyed house. "I do not know, but I hope it is." Liam looked down at his hands. He still remembered Evelyn's face. She was not angry. She was trapped, and she had been waiting for someone to free her. A few days passed. Life in Maple Creek slowly returned to normal. The unbearable heat finally started reducing. The electricity problems became less frequent. And for the first time in months, the three friends were able to sleep peacefully. But one thing remained, the memory of the old air cooler. They never talked about it with anyone, because they knew nobody would believe them. Weeks later, Liam was cleaning his room. While moving an old box, something fell onto the floor. A small piece of metal. He picked it up, and his heart stopped. It was the same symbol that was carved on the cooler. The symbol from Ravenwood Estate. He immediately called Ethan and Jason. When they arrived, they looked at the object carefully. Jason became nervous. "How did this get here? We destroyed that place." Ethan looked around the room. "Maybe something followed us." The three friends became silent, because they all had the same thought. What if the shadow was not destroyed? That night, Liam placed the metal piece outside his house, far away from his room. But at exactly midnight, something happened. The old clock on his wall stopped again. 12 a.m., the room became colder. Liam slowly opened his eyes. At first, he thought it was just another nightmare, but then he heard it, a familiar sound. The sound of an old machine starting. Brr, his entire body froze, because that sound was coming from his closet. He slowly walked toward it. His hands were shaking. He opened the door, and inside, there was nothing, except an old photograph lying on the floor. Liam picked it up, and his face turned pale. It was a picture of Ravenwood Estate, but this time, someone new was standing in the photograph. Three people, Liam, Ethan, and Jason. The picture looked old, almost like it had been taken decades ago. Then words appeared on the back. "The story is not finished." Suddenly, the room filled with cold air, and a woman's voice whispered, "Liam, thank you for saving me, but you forgot something." Liam turned around slowly. Standing near the window was Evelyn, but this time, she was not alone. Behind her stood the same dark shadow. The shadow looked different now, stronger. Evelyn looked at Liam with sadness. It escaped. The thing that trapped me for 20 years is now free. Liam stepped backward. What do you mean? Evelyn looked toward the darkness outside. It was never inside the cooler. It was inside the house, and when the house was destroyed, it found a new place to live. A cold wind entered the room. The lights started flickering. Then Evelyn whispered the words that terrified Liam. It followed you home. The next morning, Ethan and Jason found Liam unconscious on his floor. Near him was the old metal symbol, and on the wall, written in black marks, were 4 words, "I am still here." The words on Liam's wall remained there for days. I am still here. Nobody knew how they appeared. Nobody knew who wrote them. But one thing was clear. The nightmare had not ended. It had only changed its location. After finding Liam unconscious, Ethan and Jason decided they could not ignore the truth anymore. They needed answers. They returned to the old records office in Maple Creek, the same place where forgotten stories of the town were kept. After searching through hundreds of old documents, Jason found an old newspaper article. His hands started shaking. Guys, you need to see this. The article was about Ravenwood Estate, but the date was not 20 years ago. It was much older, almost 60 years old. The headline said, "Mysterious disappearances connected to Ravenwood property." Ethan read the article carefully. It mentioned a strange shadow that appeared around the house, a shadow that followed every person who entered the basement. Then they found something even more terrifying. The name written in the old records was not Evelyn Blackwood. It was the name of the first person who owned the house, a man named Thomas Blackwood. The article explained that Thomas had disappeared after experimenting with an old cooling machine he built himself, the same machine that later became Evelyn's air cooler. Liam looked at the papers. So Evelyn was not the beginning of this. She was just another victim. The 3 friends realized the truth. The shadow had existed for decades. The cooler was only a way for it to reach people. That evening, they returned to Liam's house. They wanted to destroy the metal symbol once and for all. But when they entered the room, they stopped. The symbol was gone, and on the table was an old photograph, the same photograph from before. But now, there was one more person standing in it, a person they had never seen before, a man wearing old clothes, standing behind them. Jason whispered, "Who is that?" Suddenly, the lights went out, a cold wind filled the room, and a deep voice came from the darkness. "You opened my door. Now you will carry my story." The 3 friends stood together. This time, they were not running. They knew they had to end it. Ethan grabbed the photograph. Maybe this is the connection. Maybe this is how it follows people. Liam looked at the old picture. Then he noticed something written at the bottom. Return what was taken. They understood. The shadow was attached to something that belonged to the original owner. Something that was removed from the basement decades ago. They searched the old records again, and discovered that Thomas Blackwood's most important possession was missing. An old family pocket watch. A watch that was never found after his disappearance. The next day, the 3 friends searched the ruins of Ravenwood Estate, near the collapsed basement. After hours of searching, Jason found something buried under the broken stones, an old rusty box. Inside was a pocket watch. The moment Liam touched it, the entire area became freezing cold. The dark shadow appeared behind them, bigger than before, stronger than ever. But this time, Evelyn appeared beside them. She looked at the shadow. "Your time is over." The shadow moved toward them. The pocket watch started glowing, and slowly, the darkness began pulling back. The shadow screamed. The sound echoed through the entire forest. Then everything became silent. The watch stopped ticking. The cold air disappeared, and for the first time, there was no fear, no whispers, no strange noises, only peace. Months later, Maple Creek finally forgot about Ravenwood Estate. Liam, Ethan, and Jason moved on with their lives. But they kept the pocket watch locked away, because they knew some mysteries should remain forgotten. Years later, a new family moved near the old Ravenwood property. While cleaning their new house, they found something strange in the basement, an old vintage air cooler, covered with dust. The father smiled and said, "Maybe we can fix this." He plugged it in. The machine started running. Cold air filled the room. Then from inside the cooler, a woman's whisper was heard, and this time, it was not Evelyn. It was someone new. So this the story follow Nightmare Files, where every forgotten place hides a story, and every story has a darkness waiting to return.